In this lesson, we will be reviewing the concept of subtracting integers. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to answer the following questions. How do I subtract integers? And how can I use my calculator when subtracting integers? So similar to addition, there are a number of ways that you can think about subtracting. I'm going to stick with the same methods that we did with addition. And again, you need to choose what makes the most sense for you. One thing I want to mention is that a lot of times teachers teach adding the opposite rather than subtracting. They always teach you to change it to add the opposite. We can visit that concept in class, but I'm not going to focus on that. It'll be part of what I talk about, but it's not going to be the main idea, I guess, of this presentation. So, with good guys versus bad guys. When I look at example A, I see a -3 and a -7. Now, when we started this unit on integers, I mentioned that a minus and a negative can be considered the same thing. So when I look at this -3 minus 7, I see a -3 and a -7. I see 3 bad guys, because we have 3 negatives, and I see 7 more bad guys. So altogether, I see 10 bad guys, or 10 negatives. So my answer to -3 minus 7 is -10. When I look at B, I see 5 minus 2, but I also see a +5 with a -2. So the +5 can be 5 good guys, and the -2 can represent a -2 or 2 bad guys. So what happens then is one positive and one negative will cancel each other out, if you remember back to our last video. So I have 2 sets that cancel. So what do I have left? I have 3 good guys, or 3 positives left. So 5 minus 2 is 3. Now, those are 2 numbers that you've subtracted a lot of times in your life, 5 minus 2. Right? But we can still apply our concept of subtracting integers to it. When I look at -8 minus 2, again, I see 8 negatives and I see 2 more negatives. So that's 8 bad guys, or 8 negatives, and then 2 more bad guys, or 2 more negatives. So I have a total of 10 negatives, or 10 bad guys, so that's -10. -4 minus -6. Now this is the only instance where I really think it's a great idea to add the opposite. Anytime you have a minus and a negative right next to each other, minus, negative, okay? I would suggest you change that to add the opposite. So the minus becomes add, and the -6 becomes +6. Okay, so a minus and a negative, one right next to each other, can become a plus and a positive. So now this is for -4 plus +6. We have an addition problem. So when I look at this, I think, okay, I have 4 bad guys, and I have 6 good guys. All right, when we think about how we say a negative and a positive cancel out, those cancel, those cancel, those cancel, and those cancel. So I have 2 positives left. So -4 minus -6 is +2. Okay. Let's look at another method. We can look at subtracting integers by using manipulatives. So when I look at -3 minus 7, I'm starting with 3 negatives. So there are my 3 negatives that I'm starting with. I have to take away 7. Okay? Now there's a couple ways you can think of this. -3 means I have 3 negatives. I have to take 7 away. All right? Now, I don't have 7 to take away. So again, I think it makes sense to say I have my 3 negatives, and now I'm going to put 7 more negatives in there. And what do I have now? I have 10 negatives. So my answer is negative 10. Positive 5, and I'm subtracting 2. So I have 5 positives. And I have to subtract 2. Or I have 5 positives right here. And then I have a negative 2, which means I have 2 of these. So we think back to what we learned earlier, a positive and a negative cancel. So what I have left, I have 3 positives left. So that gives me an answer of positive 3. C is negative 8 minus 2. So I'm going to start with negative 8, which means I have 8 negatives. And I have to take away 2. Okay, now the concept of taking away 2 when you have negative 8 is kind of abstract. So again, I like to think of it as I started with negative 8, and now I have 2 more negatives. So now I have a total of 10 negatives, and my answer is going to be negative 10. Negative 4 minus negative 6. I'm going to start this one by, again, adding the opposite. So I have negative 4 minus negative 6. I'm going to make that plus positive 6. So I'm going to start with my 4 negatives. And now I'm going to add to that my 6 positives. Okay, so 1, 2. So there I have my 6 positives. Again, we can look at our positive and negative and notice that each of those 4 sets is going to cancel each other out. So our final answer is that we're left with 2 positives, or just 2. Lastly, I'm going to look at using the number line. When using the number line, you're going to still use that first number as your starting point. So my first number in A is negative 3. So if my 0 is here in the middle, negative 3 would be right here. That's my starting point. So now, when you subtract means you want to get smaller generally. So we want to subtract 7. If you remember, smaller is to the left, bigger is to the right. So I'm starting at negative 3 and I'm going to subtract 7. So I'm going to go to the left 7. Okay, so where does that get me? This is negative, this is 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 8, negative 9, negative 10. Okay, so negative 3 minus 7 is negative 10. For the next example, we're going to start at positive 5. That would be right there. If we're going to subtract 2, that means we're going to get smaller, so we're going to move to the left 2. So if I move to the left 2, I end up at 3. So 5 minus 2 is 3. For the next example, negative 8 minus 2, I'm going to start at negative 8. So negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 8. I'm subtracting, which means I'm going to get smaller or move to the left. And I'm subtracting 2. So that brings me here to negative 10. So negative 8 minus 2 is negative 10. For the negative 4 minus negative 6, I'm going to show you, without changing it, to add the opposite first, just so you have an idea of how and why this works. So negative 4 is where I'm going to start. Okay, so here's my 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. There's my negative 4. Okay, subtracting means you go to the left, right? Because we want to get smaller. But then because we're subtracting a negative, this negative right here says, nope, you're not going left, you're going to the right 6. So if I move this to the right 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I end up at positive 2. So negative 4 minus negative 6 equals a positive 2. So every time you see a minus or a negative, the minus tells you to go left, but the negative then makes you change direction and go to the right, which is why subtracting a negative can also be seen as adding a positive. So now I would like you to pause the video and work on these 6 problems. You can use any of the methods that make sense to you, and then we'll go through the answers once you are finished. Okay. To start out, in A we have negative 3 minus negative 2. When I see the minus and the negative, again I remind myself that I should change that to add the opposite. For this one I'm going to do the good guy, bad guy approach. So I have 3 bad guys. I have 2 good guys. And when I cancel out my positive and negatives, I end up with a negative 1. Part B has a negative 4 minus 3. So I'm starting out with 4 bad guys from that negative 4. And then I have a minus 3. Now a negative 3 is 3 more bad guys. So when I look at negative 4 minus 3, I count up what I have because there's nothing that's going to cancel, and I have negative 7. For C, I'm going to start out with a positive 9, which means 9 good guys. And now I have a minus 3 or a negative 3, which represents 3 bad guys. Now in this case, I have some positive and negative sets that cancel each other. So those cancel, and those cancel. I'm left with a positive 6. For D, we have 5 minus negative 6. So I see the minus and the negative, so I add the opposite. And this becomes 5 plus 6. Now, if we think about addition that we've done all along, 5 plus 6 is 11. Now, if that doesn't make sense to you, or you're not thinking in terms of just addition, you can do the good guy, bad guy approach, where we have 5 good guys, and we're adding 6 more good guys, and we have a total of 11 good guys, or positive 11. In E, we have 4 minus 5. So we're starting with 4 good guys. And the minus 5 is like a negative 5 again, so that's 5 bad guys. So if I look at what sets of positive and negatives I have, I can cancel that one, and that one, and that one, and that one. And I'm left with one negative, so that's going to equal -1. 7 minus 2. Now again, you can just use your subtraction facts and come up with this answer. Or if you want to use the manipulatives or number line or good guy, bad guy approach, that'll work also. So we're starting with a positive 7, or 7 good guys. And we're subtracting 2, or you can think of that as a -2, where we have 2 bad guys. Okay, so the good guy and bad guys take each other out. We can cancel that positive, those 2 positive and negatives, and we are left with 5 good guys, 5 positives, an answer of 5. The last thing I want to do is take a look at how this works using graphing calculators. Just a little bit of information regarding how to use your calculator. So if we want to subtract, you have to keep in mind that your negative button is down at the bottom next to your decimal point. So if you're going to type in a negative number, that's the button you want to use. So there's -3. Now if I'm going to subtract, I'm going to use my minus sign. Now the next number is either going to be positive or negative. So if I'm subtracting, let's say a positive 9, I would just put in the 9. So that's read -3 minus 9, and our calculator is going to give us -12. Okay? If I'm going to start with a negative number, let's say -7, and I'm going to subtract another negative, I have to use my subtraction button to do the subtract. Then the negative, I'm going to use a negative. So if I want to do -7 minus -8, the minus sign will always show up as a little bit longer than the negative sign. So there I have -7 minus -8, and that gives me a 1. If you were to type in a negative number using the minus sign, okay, it's going to put the A and S, which means your previous answer, because it thinks you want to subtract. Okay, so if you want to do a negative number first, you always have to start with your negative. If you want to do a positive number first, again, just type in the positive number. And if you're subtracting, but you accidentally hit your negative sign, and then the number you want to subtract, your calculator is going to give you an error. Okay, so what you can do is you can choose to go to. That's where I usually go, right there. Okay, so go to is 2. I'm going to choose that, and it's going to go right on that negative sign to tell me, hey, that's not right. So then I would change that to a minus, and if I want to just figure out 9 minus 2, it's going to tell me 7. Okay, so with doing your assignment, hopefully you can experiment a little bit with your calculator, become familiar with the minus and the negative signs, and if you have questions, I can help you in class. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it.